Now, this might be controversial, but here are 5 reasons why you should never move to Asheville, North Carolina. Hi, welcome to our channel. This is called Living in Asheville, and we regret every minute of it. Just kidding, we kind of like it here. But here are some pitfalls you might want to consider. Tourism. How many tourists do we have here yearly? About 4 million. How much money does that bring into the economy? About $2.6 billion in 2001 at least. So is Asheville City going to get rid of that anytime soon? Probably not. What they've done is they have marketed for years and years and years around surrounding areas to bring people to Asheville. And you have probably been a part of that marketing. And you've probably seen Good Housekeeping and Southern Living and all these magazines that feature Asheville quite often. So what has that done for Asheville? Well, it's increased building for sure. You have new hotels springing up all the time. You might wait a little bit longer in line at restaurants or not even be able to get in. There's a place downtown, Chai Pani, and I love Indian food that I've wanted to eat at for years, and I've never been able to get in. It's not that I couldn't, it's just that I don't have the patience personally. And not only are we talking about lines for restaurants that are really popular, we're talking about long waits for things like daycare, childcare. There are just things that you have to be a little bit more prepared for when you think about coming to Asheville than you might in a smaller town. And another thing that's really hurting the locals is that people are moving from other places. And so housing is really limited, especially for people who are wanting to rent. That with the combination of people starting Airbnbs for the large tourism scene here to make a little bit of extra income on the side has really left people without a lot of options when it comes to finding a house for rent. So with all the tourists coming to town, a lot of people have second homes or part of their homes that they're renting as Airbnb, which is great for them because they get a little bit of extra income. But what it's done to the local people is it's eliminated a lot of those housing rental opportunities that they had in the past, or they're priced out of them now. And then along with the tourists and along with the marketing scheme of Beer City, USA, we have a lot of breweries that have come to town and a lot of tourists that have come to town to taste our beer, which is supposed to be great because of the water. Now, it probably is really good, but what that leaves is an aftertaste of a few people who are a little tipsy. And it's not like there's a ton of people walking around drunk, but you will notice after a certain time of night downtown, the town turns a little wonky-donkey. Number 2, the nature. And the climate here, it can be quite extreme. Now, you know that Asheville is surrounded by water, mostly rivers. And what happens when we get a lot of rain, which we do often, that floods. So you have to be really careful about where you're building, where you're buying, where you're living, and where you're playing. And why are we getting so much rain? Because we live in a designated rainforest. We get tons of rain a year. And it's really not that noticeable, but it does affect the rivers and the ground and how much saturation it can really take. Now, Asheville, as you know, has 4 distinct seasons, and that's wonderful for the most part. But there are people that move here from other places like Florida that have never seen snow, never seen ice, and when they get out on those 2 or 3 days per year where it gets icy with black ice, they have no idea what to do, and it becomes just a wild show out there, a hot mess. So just be careful. Another thing to watch out for is basements. We have a lot of basements in North Carolina. Why? Because we have a lot of mountains. So when you combine the excessive water with warm climate and a rainforest in a basement, it's a recipe for disaster. I'm not saying houses are falling down or anything like that, but you want to be cautious and have a dehumidifier down there and monitor the humidity. The last thing you want to be doing is living with mold in your walls, so pay attention. Buying a dehumidifier is much less expensive than redoing your whole basement. Number 3, gentrification. This is a touchy subject and not easy to cover because Asheville used to look a lot different than it does now. So with the popularity and the marketing that they've chosen to do of our city, there's a lot of people coming from other areas which have created a displacement of the locals that had been here for generations. And the result of that has created a lessening of the characteristics of Asheville and these neighborhoods that really created that charm. Now, don't get me wrong, they've replaced it with other kind of charm, but it's just different than it used to be. There are condos going up everywhere. There are buildings being built and houses being constructed, and they're clearing the path and making the way for more people to come here. So it's something to keep in mind. It's definitely not going to get any smaller here. It's only growing. And with that, there are some growing pains. Trust me, you're not the only person that wants to learn more about Asheville. And with the people coming to town, the home prices have risen, which can price people out of a city that they grew up in. So with more and more people coming to Asheville, the locals who have been here for generations are becoming priced out. Heartbroken, they're packing their bags and they're leaving town for greener pastures that they can afford to live in and have a life that is nicer for them than trying to struggle and be here because the cost of living has gone up. A lot of the local artists, which brought the charm and uniqueness and the make Asheville weird aspect, are no longer able to make it here. So tell me, how did you learn about Asheville? Write it in the comments down below. And what's your impression? Why would you even consider moving here? So I'm curious, if you're already here and you're noticing growing pains too, what are those growing pains that you're noticing? Write that in the comments below and let's explore it later. Number 4, culture. So Asheville is kind of in a unique little bubble in North Carolina. So Asheville is pretty dang liberal. But if you think about North Carolina, it's pretty conservative. So we have a little bit of a paradox here. And people can even see that in different regions within Asheville as well. We're kind of known as a hippie town, right? So if you like hippies and you like spirituality and you like community and you like woo-woo things, you're in the right place. If you don't, you might not feel as at home here. Some people would say in Asheville too, there's a lack of diversity. When you look at the overall picture, all races and colors are not as well represented here as they are in other cities. Number 5, infrastructure. So let's tackle traffic first. It sometimes can be quite a bear. So especially if you're coming from south up north into Asheville for the morning or evening commute, that can be awful, or coming from the west side as well. There are some ways that can get around it, but you have to kind of be strategic because you're not the only one that knows that secret. Another thing to note, which a lot of people don't know, is our water supply can sometimes be cut off. They have some problems sometimes, and we have a really high pressure here on our water supply. So sometimes that pressure valve can get popped. So you really have to be careful when constructing your home or thinking about your water system in your home. And like most places in the US, all of our power lines are above the ground. So we talk about those winter freezes and ice or windstorms of any sort. We get knocked down. We're often without power. It flickers on and off, which affects our internet as well. And speaking of internet, we don't have the best coverage here for internet. There's just not a lot right now. Now, there's more in the works coming to the area, but even if you get out of Asheville about 30 miles or even 20 miles in some situations, you have to make sure that the property that you're buying has sufficient internet. And a lot of them don't yet. We have a similar problem with cell phone service. Now, we are in the mountains and maybe there's some excuses there, but I know Verizon recently switched to 5G and that's affected everybody. Verizon used to be the number 1 carrier here and it's no longer. It just stopped working one day. It'll probably slowly start to come back, but for right now, we're just SOL. So there you go. Those are 5 reasons to not even consider moving to Asheville, North Carolina. But truth be told, and I'm a little biased, I don't think they're that big of a deal. And they probably are not so different than any other place that you're considering looking at for moving. But all in all, please reach out. What did I miss? Did I miss something? Comment down below. Maybe you disagree with something that I said. I would love to hear from you. And if you have any questions, reach out. You can send us an email, send us a text, call us up. No problem. This is the bonus round, and this is the most important. Asheville, the cesspool of sin. We are living in Asheville, and we explore what it's like to live, eat, work, sleep, and play in Asheville, North Carolina, and we want to hear from you. Hit that subscribe button, click that little bell so that you can be alerted every time we make a new video about Asheville. Until then, ciao for now.